Yo, it's JP. I'm going to talk today about so-called cultural fit. Cultural fit. Raise your hand if you have heard this one before. We're really sorry, but you're just not a good cultural fit. You're just not a good fit with our culture. You know, our company is all about culture. And you're just not a good cultural fit. You're just not a good fit with our culture, it's so important to us. I mean, it really is. We pride ourselves on our culture, and you're just not a good fit with that culture. Have you heard that one before? Have you heard that one before? I've heard that one before. My God, I've heard that one like 100 times. Okay. I've heard it 100 times. And almost invariably, when I get those cases and those matters come across my desk, there are usually one of three things going on, okay? One, race discrimination. I see that a lot. I see that a lot. I hear that a lot in race discrimination cases, okay? And I'll give you an example. All right. This is from the case files. This is from a case that we're about to file out in California. So there is a company, and it's an ethnic grocery chain. Okay. It's an ethnic grocery chain. All right. And believe it or not, we actually had a whistleblower who worked at the company as a recruiter. And the darndest thing, okay? This guy would keep putting candidates forward for a variety of different positions, mostly working in warehouse facilities. And the folks he would put forward for these jobs, they were qualified. Many of them had experience working in food industry related warehouse roles. But every time he would put forward a black candidate, the person above him, in terms of the hiring chain, would say that the person was not a good fit or not a good cultural fit. And this happened with multiple black candidates in a very short frame of time. And so God bless this homie, okay, who actually lost his job. He lost his job in connection with all of this and in connection with blowing the whistle. And unfortunately, he was in a jam financially, didn't know what he was doing, and he wound up signing away. He wound up signing away his rights. Okay, he wound up signing away his rights, unbeknownst to him. But this homie was so righteous. Okay, he went to he was an Hispanic guy. He was a Hispanic guy. He went back to the powers that be and said, "Okay, look, I've presented multiple qualified candidates for a variety of different positions. And for each one of the past couple candidates, you've come back to me and you've told me they are not a good fit or not a good cultural fit. And I want to know why. Why not? Okay. Why are these people not a good cultural fit, especially when you haven't even flipping hired them yet? Okay. You haven't even flipping hired them yet. Well, the company didn't like that, and so they wound up retaliating against this guy and firing him, because the truth is, cultural fit in that context was just code for we're racist and we don't want to hire black folks, okay? Because I then got the data, I got the statistics in terms of the racial demographic makeup of the head count at various locations for this company throughout the country. And in one instance, for example, right, in Houston, which has a massive black population, they had something like 1 or 2 employees out of 100 or more in Houston were black. So clearly they have racist hiring practices, and the the code of you're not a good cultural fit, like that's not even thinly veiled. That's pretty blatant. So when I hear not a good cultural fit, okay, one, I see a lot of racism. Okay, I see a lot of racism. I've seen that typically directed towards black folks, but in some other instances, I've seen it directed towards Hispanic folks as well. I've seen it directed towards Indian folks as well. Okay, but mostly I see those cases involving racism against black folks. Number two, what's the other big category where I see the not a cultural fit or not a good cultural fit, not a fit for our culture? I see it all the time in connection with age discrimination. I see it in connection with age discrimination. I've seen that affect both men and women, but I particularly see that affecting women who are 50 plus. I've made this point in other videos, and I'm going to make it again because I think it's a very significant point. Age discrimination impacts both men and women, but it impacts them differently, and it impacts women at an earlier stage in their career. So whereas I typically don't see strong age discrimination cases involving men who are much younger than 54, 55, right? In terms of all the age discrimination matters that have come in the door over the past several years, the real ones, the legitimate ones, the strong ones, if it's a man who is the employee or the potential plaintiff, I don't see that impacting men until about mid 50s, okay, 54, 55, 56. That's when I see age discrimination impacting men. But when it comes to women, I see age discrimination impacting women almost a full decade before it starts impacting men. So I see a lot of age discrimination against women starting in their mid 40s. And I've had a number of cases involving age discrimination against both men and women where the company's explanation was, you're not a good cultural fit. And when you unpack that, okay, when you unpack that, you're often dealing with a startup, a tech company, an industry that is dominated by younger men, younger white men in particular. I see it all the time, okay? And the code for not being a good cultural fit, you'll often see it crop up in situations where there's a heavy culture of drinking attached to the workplace, right? Drinking either at work or immediately after work, at lunches, at firm or company related functions. I've seen this in law firms. I've seen age discrimination cases play out in law firms where the law firm's culture was heavy partying, heavy drinking, drug use, dominated and sort of heavily tilted towards younger men. There were some older, male partners in the mix, but women, 45, 50 plus, were basically treated as the odd person out and treated like they're not a, quote, cultural fit. So when you're in that sort of context involving age discrimination, you hear that explanation or excuse thrown around, you have to delve deeper and you have to ask, what is the culture, okay? If the culture is all sorts of drinking and partying and extracurriculars and sort of after firm events that lead to shenanigans, I have seen many cases over the past several years where that is the real culture that is being referenced. Now, the company's not going to say that. But I've seen many cases where that's actually what is beneath the bullshit, okay? It's that sort of culture where an older man or woman is not considered a good cultural fit. So one of the things that you can do for yourself, okay, if you're in this sort of situation, if you are facing, whether it's age discrimination, race discrimination, any other discrimination, and you're being told that you are not a good cultural fit? Well, you're either one, being fired right at that moment, or two, you're going to be fired, or three, you're probably going to quit because the writing is on the wall. So when this comes up, the next time it comes up, the next time you have an opportunity to bring this up, or you can even create an opportunity to bring this up, put the powers that be on the spot, okay? Put them on the spot. Ask them to explain exactly what the culture is and exactly why you are not a good cultural fit. Because the concept of a good cultural fit is very vague, it's nebulous, it's amorphous, it's undefined, and it lends itself to discrimination, bigotry, shenanigans, cliquishness, etc. If there is something real there, okay? If there is something real on the merits in terms of performance, productivity, deliverables, accountability, that's different. That's different, okay? That's different. If culture is truly a legitimate criterion, okay? If culture is a legitimate factor and the culture is about being accountable, being responsible, being able to accept constructive feedback, being able to work in a team, if that's what culture really is a stand-in for, and it's being used in a legitimate sense, then the company or the decision maker, the powers that be, they should be able to articulate in specific terms where you are falling deficient. They should be able to articulate what the standards are and where you are deficient vis-a-vis those specific standards. But my guess is that if you are being told you are not a good cultural fit, that in many instances, probably in 60 or 70% of all instances where I've seen that sort of explanation or excuse thrown around, there is something nefarious behind that curtain. If there's specific feedback, if there are specific objective goals, standards, expectations, they can all be articulated in specific terms. But if culture is being used as a bullshit cover for some sort of discrimination, they're not going to have a good answer. So you want to put them on the spot. And you can do that either verbally in a conversation where you just put them on the spot and ask them, why am I not a good cultural fit? What am I doing? What am I doing that doesn't align with the culture? What is the culture? Can you explain this to me and give me specifics, right? And then you take contemporaneous notes. Because this is the thing, okay? These companies, especially the bigger they get, okay? The bigger they get, the more buttoned up they get, okay? The more policies and procedures and red tape and bureaucracy, and the more they're going to cover their ass, okay? So the odds of you requesting an explanation and actually getting a meaningful explanation in writing, that's slim to none, okay? That's slim to none. Is it preferable if you get some kind of explanation in writing? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's fantastic. If you have any sort of in the office chat functionality, right? Whether you use Slack or you use some type of chat software, okay? That's fantastic, okay? I'm just giving you, see, this is where the sausage is really made, all right? This is where the sausage is really made. The American legal system is not a justice system. The American legal system is about A, power, and B, what can you prove, okay? And unfortunately, it's dysfunctional and sometimes rampantly corrupt, all right? So you have to understand, like, that's the landscape, a dysfunctional shitfest of a system, okay? That's what we're up against here, folks, okay? And you have all the machinations of corporate America. And so you have to look for avenues where you can prove your claims. You have to look for areas where you can obtain or acquire meaningful evidence. And the more formal the process or the more formal the exchange, the more tightly controlled corporate speak gobbledygook is going to be involved on the company's side of the ledger. And I'm sure some of you can follow that, right? And what I mean by that is if you submit a formal complaint, okay? If you submit a formal complaint to HR, all right, you can expect that by virtue of that being a formal complaint, the company's response is going to be dressed up with a whole bunch of bullshit gobbledygook corporate speak to cover its ass, okay? You can absolutely expect that. Where are you more likely? Where are you more likely to catch the company off guard, and where is the company less likely to engage in those shenanigans and just like fly by the seat of its pants without HR or legal supervising it? In something that is informal, okay? Sure, maybe it's an email, but even with an email, there's a better chance that if the email is asking for explanations, right? Why aren't you a good cultural fit? Please provide specifics, etc. That sort of email is probably going to set off some alarms on the other side, and whoever receives that, supervisor, manager, etc., they're probably going to run it up the flagpole to HR or to legal before they give you a nice boilerplate horseshit corporate American response, okay? That's why if it's a big company and you have some sort of intercompany chat functionality, whether it's an app or Slack, it's on your computer, whatever it is, some kind of within the company messaging system, that is often a great source of evidence because, again, it's how the sausage is made. You have to think about it, all right? Folks who are involved in an exchange over a messaging application like that, they're going to be more inclined to just have a casual, free-flowing, back and forth conversation, and they're going to be less likely to have their guard up, right? To have alarm bells going off. So you raise it in that channel, right? Raise it in as many channels as you can conceivably raise it, because at a certain point, the writing is on the wall. If you're being told you're not a good cultural fit, then you're on your way out. And so you might as well document the situation and create as many possible opportunities to obtain compelling evidence that the company is full of shit. And then why do I talk about the interoffice chat? Because I've actually had many cases. I've had multiple cases, not just one, not just two, not just three. I've had several cases where there was compelling evidence in the form of interoffice chat, where the plaintiff, the employee who was being told they were not a good cultural fit, they raised this on a chat with various managers, supervisors, coworkers, etc., to try and get feedback about what a good cultural fit was. And in some of these instances, the company has stepped in it. The company has stepped in it, and they have articulated a vague bullshit standard for what the culture is that just goes to prove the real meaning of that excuse or explanation, not a good cultural fit, had something to do with unlawful discrimination. The bottom line here, folks, is if that is the explanation that corporate America is giving you, that you're not a good cultural fit, you're not a good fit with our culture, then the writing is on the wall. Prepare to make your exit, but put them on the spot and request that they explain to you specifically what the culture is and where you are failing to meet the standards of that culture. Get them to give you the actual metrics. Document, and remember, whatever documents or evidence that you do not retain on your personal devices, in your personal email account, you have to understand, when you leave the company, when you walk out the door, they're going to cut your devices off, they're going to cut your accounts off, And 70% of the time or more, they're going to go through and they're going to purge anything that could be harmful to the company in the event of litigation. Jonathan Pollard, hope this was helpful. Happy Wednesday.